Welcome back to the Elder Girls Podcast. We're so glad that you are here with us again today. And we are excited about doing volume 2 of this season's podcasting. And we're just going to get right into it, Anna. I'm glad you're here with me today. I feel uncomfortable doing stuff like this by myself. So it wouldn't be the Elder Girls without at least 2 of us.
Right. Yes.
So
Welcome, everybody.
Today we're going to talk about just some common courtesies that Mama raised us with and Daddy, and just our world that we lived in back then, Anna. Kind of in the world that we live in nowadays, it's kind of a forgotten thing, some of these that we're going to discuss today. And we don't want to get real deep and heavy, but I do feel like we touched a little bit last week with our just welcome back thing, for the first volume, about how that it's so important that we remember we're royal kids and that we're in God's kingdom. And so I think some of these common courtesies just kind of tie right in with that. So just to shoot off some of them, I used some 1, 2, and 3 little statements as far as like 1 word or 2 word or 3 words. And some of those were excuse me or pardon me, forgive me. Here's one everybody knows if you know what Chick-fil-A is all about, my pleasure. I'm sorry, please, thank you. And then just some good old common yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. What do you think, Anna?
Yes, I think that those are some great things to discuss and talk about, and some areas that it seems like sometimes the people from different regions or different generations maybe don't know about or don't value as much, or it isn't common to them like it is to us from the way that we were raised.
So true. I know a lot of times we've really noticed, Joe and I, my husband, and even Antonia sometimes will get to talking when we go to a restaurant, or even sometimes if you go through a drive-through, that a lot of times when you say thank you, just as a common courtesy, for receiving something through the window or at your table or whatever, a lot of the comeback nowadays is just yep, or yeah, or sure thing, or just kind of a real, and I know they probably don't mean it rude, but sometimes it just comes across almost like I don't know what the word is that I'm seeking for, but and I'm not being rude, but it almost just comes across like we're just real lackadaisical, just shooting off whatever comes, instead of being a little more thoughtful about our replies. And so I'm not picking, but it's just common courtesies, just good old words, old fashioned words, I guess you could say, in the world that we were brought up in, and that I really feel like old fashioned needs to be in again. Maybe we can start a new fad and call it the old fashioned fad.
I agree.
Who knows?
I agree. And I don't think that we're the only ones feeling that way. I've followed a number of different people that are speaking to that in a variety of different ways right now, to where we've become so informal and so casual in our current society that courtesy and respect and classiness have kind of gone away,
Yes.
And so we forget that there are just common mores and norms. And I know that I think I used that in our conversation the last time as well. But mores and norms are cultural principles or cultural standards of conduct, right? And so if we don't have mores and norms in place, then sometime we're going to find ourselves digressing back to caveman days,
Yes.
What people like to refer to as caveman days, where you just grunt and kind of, and sometimes I feel like we're there already. There's no niceties to life.
So true. You're right. It's so true. It is so true. And, it's kind of funny. We laugh about that, but in a way, it's not funny because we don't want to get to the place where our human interaction is just grunting and
Yes.
growling and
It's so true, Sarah. And, not to be super intense because we have to get into the conversation of the manners, but this whole conversation of you can be whatever you want to be, and you have people that want to be a cat or people who want to be a dog or people who want to be a dragon. I mean, that's the kind of things they're doing. They're meowing in school. How has society digressed on so many levels when we get back to that state?
yes, you're right. So true. Um, so do we want to just jump in with both feet and tackle a couple of these?
Yes, let's go.
Okay, so let's start off with how about we just start off with thank you? Thank you's a good one. So thank you. Thank you just means simply to express a feeling of gratitude. And when I say the word gratitude, I think of the lady, and I'm not going to call her title out because she's a very popular Instagram influencer that
My husband loves.
thousands and my daughter thousands of people follow her, and she does. But one thing I do appreciate is she does take time every day to express a small little portion of her gratitude for different things through her life and through life. And so saying thank you is just a simple way we can express gratitude for anything. Services given to us, services rendered to us, people working with and for us, if we're in a position of leadership or a position of authority. I think that we should not forget and think that just because we're in a place of authority or leadership, we should not forget to express our gratitude for all of the helping hands, because without all of those helping hands, it would be impossible to do a lot of things that get done by ourselves. And I feel like personally, me, just hearing those two words makes me feel so appreciated. It may not be elaborate, it may not be big fancy things, but just somebody saying thank you makes me feel appreciated.
Absolutely. And really, what saying thank you does is it takes that relationship or that collaboration from a transactional collaboration to a relational collaboration. So
Yes.
when you're working with somebody, and so I find it really interesting that you brought that up, and I'm glad that you did because I look through the lens of leadership perspective. That's the world that I work in a lot, and so in leadership, the goal is to help people become, right? It's all about helping others, or it should be. If it's not,
Yes.
leading others to growth and to become better people in life and to help ourselves become better continually, right? So that we can continue improving the environment that we're in and expanding the kingdom of God. But when you're working with people, it's so easy in the seasons where things are intense and they are high paced and you're on a mission and you are trying to accomplish things to operate at a very transactional level.
Yes.
And so when I say a transactional level, that's a level where you're asking people to accomplish tasks. You're checking up with people to make sure they accomplish their task. You're collaborating with teams and with different individuals. And you even do this in your home, right? Because family is a collaborative effort.
Mhm.
But you're working with people and trying to accomplish people. Maybe you're working jobs, and for you all, you're traveling back and forth a lot. So your time is busy. So you get in that zone of busyness and getting things done. And if we don't say thank you, it becomes very transactional where you're asking for something and you're receiving, but there's no reciprocation of gratitude in the process. What the term thank you does is it takes it to a relational thing. It recognizes that the people that we're dealing with are human and that, you know, they provided something for us. So we should offer them something in return. Maybe we don't have money to offer them. Maybe we don't have whatever to offer them, but we can offer them a simple term of gratitude. Thank you. And that makes people feel so appreciated, Sarah. It can take people from not wanting to participate to a level where they're excited to participate because they feel valued on your team. And I think that can
Yes.
relate to your family as well.
Definitely. And I think too that it really creates, like you said, a relational bond to where the next time you need assistance in an area, whether it's on a job or in the home or familial or just friendship, in any aspect of our lives, it makes it so much easier for those persons or people to want to participate and to be more willing to say, hey, yeah, I can help out with that. I've got a little bit of free time. I'm more than willing to come and join you because they were shown that appreciation. And so they feel, like you said, valued and not like they're wasting precious time, because in the busy world that we all live in, sometimes it can be frustrating when you go and you volunteer, in a volunteer army of the Lord, even.
Right.
you know, if I'm not, I don't do things to be valued or do things for people to give me accolades, but it always helps to just hear the words thank you. And God likes to hear thank you. That's why he created praise. Our
Sarah,
praise and our worship to him is a huge thank you.
I think it's so neat that you said that because that is exactly the thought that was in my mind is that God, even himself, likes to hear us say thank you. That's part of our worship to him. He likes to hear our gratitude. And in 1 Thessalonians 5:18, it's literally a scriptural command. It doesn't say it's an option. It says, in everything, give thanks. For this is the will of
Yes,
God in Christ Jesus concerning you. And so, my ear thing keeps falling out. Sorry about that.
that's okay.
but, but it just is a scriptural reminder that, none of us are owed anything. And so I've heard a lot of times preached like, we shouldn't have to say thank you. Or I've even heard people say, we shouldn't have to say thank you. This should be your passion and your purpose. Well, even God likes to hear thank you when he does things for people, and so I think it's important that we do that, that we share that with the people that we love, because words build people up and words tear people down. And thank you makes people feel valued. And so when somebody does something nice for you, or when somebody helps you with something unexpectedly, or somebody takes time out of their life to contribute, I think it's a simple way that you can make them feel valued.
Yes, so true. And from the oldest to the youngest, I found
Absolutely.
I work a lot with children, and even the littlest kids. When I tell them thank you, it's like a little light bulb or a flower just blooms in their little face. You can just see in their little eyes and their facial expressions, wow, I just did this, in their mind,
Yeah.
it might be this huge little thing, but to me, when I ask them, can you put your paper over here in this little file? It's not that big of a thing or a big of a deal. But when I told them thank you, and they strut off like I'm the big cheese.
Definitely.
And so I feel like in all ages, it's never wrong to just show our appreciation by saying those two small little words, thank you.
Yes, and you know what? I think it's important to just add this little tidbit in here. You're talking from the younger perspective, and I'm talking from the kind of the older perspective in life of people that we work with. But from all ages, I don't think we have to be concerned that telling people thank you and recognizing their contribution makes them become prideful. Sometimes I think we withhold important responses like that because we don't want people to get too big for their britches
Right.
or think that they're so good at what they do that we can't live without them. That's so prideful. What a
Mhm.
prideful approach, you know? And so to say thank you is a humbling experience because it means that we recognize that people didn't have to do something, but they chose to do it. So that
Yeah,
takes a little bit of humility on our part, right? To say thank you for doing that for me, you know? And so I think it's always great to take the humble side in a process like that.
absolutely. I agree. And so let's kind of segue from thank you into the next response, which would be you're welcome. So many times when we say thank you, we get the comeback or the responding word is yep or yeah or no prob or sure thing or everybody, and I'm sure that comes from different areas of the country. Again, here, we're not picking, we're just living, we're talking life experiences, right? Our podcast is real talk, and so from different countries or different areas of the country of the United States, since we live in the United States, that's probably the way that they've always heard it, or it's always that done that way. But as royal kids, and I'm going to go back to that a lot because we are God's royal kids. We are his royal people. And so I feel like just a simple you're welcome, or, and as Chick-fil-A says, my pleasure.
Right?
Because my pleasure, when you really look it up, it just simply means it's a pleasure to serve you. It's my pleasure to serve you. And so, and here we can really delve deep, Anna, like we had talked at the beginning of the podcast in our introduction, is not letting, we don't want to allow these things to just become a rote. Just a little story here, real quick story. Joe was telling me that he has this football student that is coming to his program that he does on his job. And this is part of our phrases that I want to discuss, and it won't take long to discuss these phrases, but his little phrase was yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, and he's been taught that. But Joe said that he said it so much that it about drove him crazy, and he was like, stop saying that. Because he was just saying it by rote, and he could tell he wasn't really, I'm going to say, ingesting or digesting what he really needed to digest or ingest. He was just saying it to say, okay, yeah, get off my back. So
Right.
when we say you're welcome or any of these phrases, really, we need to make sure that we're not just by rote spitting it out. We want to be conscientious about using it. And I'm not a teacher today, although that is my calling. But those are things that in all of these phrases, we want to be real careful that we are ingesting or using them in the proper way, I guess you could say.
Yes. I believe what you're getting back to, when I hear you speaking to these things, once again it comes back to that relational thing, right? Being authentic and relational with people because it is so easy to just bypass those
Mhm.
relational niceties that keep us in relation and in good standing with people. Niceties and manners and respect and courtesy keep us in good standing with people. That's part of a person's character. Now, there's, I'm going a little deeper here, but I want to for just a minute on this because a lot of times we talk about it like it's just an expectation. But why is it an expectation? Because we want to be known for good character. We want to be known that we have integrity. We want to be known that we're relational with people. And so that we're authentic with people. And so it goes back to that real conversation. So to do like that young man did, which we see a lot, it's disingenuous, right? Because people just they don't want to commit to whatever you're telling them to do or whatever. Your welcome is a great way just to respond to somebody, just to let them know that you received their thank you when they say thank you or my pleasure or glad to be of help or something like that. It's just relational at the end of the day. It's that collegiality of relationship and interacting with people. It just
Yes.
gets makes life rich. You know what I mean?
Yes, I like how you coined that. It makes life rich because in the world that we live in now, it seems that everything is done such on the fly and on off the cuff. Let me just shoot something off the cuff, or let me have some kind of a sarcastic comeback that makes everybody laugh or gets people off my back. And so, really, as God's people and royal kids, we really want to put out there, not in a fake way and not in a shallow way, but we want to put out there that we have deeper relational meaning in our lives. And this brings me to a thought here, Anna, if I can just use this example real quick. I'm not boasting. I want to use this as an example. We've been working with these girls at Pizza Hut since we've moved to Pratt, Kansas. So in January, that started the 6th year that we have been here. And all of the girls there's 3 girls that we have been working with. All of them have worked there except for one for the last 5 years. One came on a year later, so she's been there 4 years. And these are hard girls. They're in their older teens, one's in her 20s, and they're hard. You can see the hardness in their eyes and the expressions on their faces. And just out of the blue, one of these girls, it's probably been 2-3 months ago, just started telling me her story, girl. And it just blew me away. It just blew me away. And for the longest time, she was the one that we worked really hard to start just getting a relationship built with her. And she was so kind of offset and just kind of cold. And, when we'd go in and eat there, or we'd go through the drive-thru or call in something to pick up, it was just really just she was a hard case. And I just kept praying, God, I don't know how I can break. And I'm not going to call her name because I'm believing God someday she's going to be in church.
Absolutely.
But I just kept praying, God, somehow, some way, help me to break in. And I just kept showing her kindness and using these words. Thank you. You're welcome. You're doing an excellent job. She'd come into the table and just real curt, real cold. Is there anything else you need? And I would tell her, oh no, you've done fantastic. And I'd always try to encourage and use words of encouragement to her. And that makes me cry, but it thrills my heart because last week we went in there and we were in a hurry because it was time, it was Tuesday night and we knew we only had a certain amount of time or whatever. So we ordered our food, got our food, ate, and we were checking out, and I was writing out the receipt, signing the receipt and whatever. And it was actually another girl that has just started that was taking care of us. But this girl she was about to go off shift and she was doing her final task, cleaning and sweeping and whatever. She literally threw her broom on the floor in the middle of the restaurant and sat her dustpan up against the table and came up to the front checkout counter and pushed me back and wrapped her arms around me and squeezed me in such a tight hug and told me, I love you. And I'm not kidding, girl. I melted right into a puddle because I had been working on this girl for 4 long years. And I just kept saying, God, somehow, some way, help me to break into this girl. Help me to get, help me to let her feel your love. And when she did that, it wasn't a pride issue with me, Anna. It was a thought of, God, you're moving. Immediately, that was the thought that came to my mind, and I got in the car and Antonia, she even gave Antonia a hug, which Antonia is not like me. She's not a huggy person, but she said, Mom, she hugged me and she even hugged Joe when Joe was walking out. And I said, you know what, Antonia? I said, for the first time in her life, she has felt real love. And this is where I'm coming from with just these common courtesies. I really felt impressed to do this because I feel like if we will get the the revelation of just showing common courtesy to people, that it goes beyond just our own humanity and our own self. It goes deeper because the world that we live in, there's not there's not real love shown. There's not, everything is so shallow and so quick and so, on the fly and spur of the moment. And so I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but that's where I really feel like this is so important. Just showing common courtesies to people.
Yes. And it makes them feel valued. And how many people that we deal with don't feel valued because they don't have good relationships with people in their life. And they don't have, like you said, a loving relationship where they have an understanding of what love should look like, you know? I mean, this goes a little spiritual here, but it's just who we are on the elder girls and in these real conversations. But Satan is such a counterfeit. And so
Yes.
when you don't have God in your life and you don't have a relationship with God and the people around you don't have God in their life and they don't have a relationship with God, sometimes the everything is so brusque and it's so, once again, I don't even know how to say it other than transactional. You know, there's an expectation that you give something, but you're not always guaranteed to receive something in return. And so even sharing a simple thank you or a welcome, you're welcome with somebody, it's like a gift to them because they're not used to receiving something in return. They're used to
Hmm.
giving, giving, giving out, and there's an expectation of them always giving. But those that have those expectations don't always take on the responsibility of reciprocating with something of value back to them, even if it's just words. And believe me, words can make or break people. You really can. And there's a lot of studies on this. We can go into it another time. But you can go out and anybody can go out and research how much just simple ways you talk to people can really make or break your relationship. But when you're trying to reach someone like you are this young lady, girl, it reminds me, I'm in a rabbit trail here. And I know I interrupted what I was saying, but I interrupt my own self sometimes. It's pretty bad. I need to learn some manners. Sorry, I cracked myself up. I am trying to get better about not interrupting people though, because the elders, we're a big family. We just interrupt each other all the time. So bad we interrupt ourselves. Daniel and I talk about this a lot because we go to restaurants, Sarah, like you and the girls at Pizza Hut, and people fight over our table.
Hmm.
Even here in Sacramento and Elk Grove, it was the same way in Hutchinson. We'd go to Anchor Inn, and that
Hmm.
Juan and his aunts and the siblings would fight to serve our table. They would Juan would like steal us from his aunts so that we could sit in his section. And why was it? Because we were courteous to him and we had fun with him and we always left him a really good tip. you know? And we go to this restaurant here where we live, a little Mexican restaurant around the corner from our house. And there's three siblings that run the restaurant. Their dad owns it, and the three siblings serve and they run the restaurant. And we come in and they literally fight over us. Like which one of them is going to get to serve our table. And Sarah, I think it's just because we're authentic and we're down to earth. We chat with them, we ask how life's going, and then we leave them a really good tip, which I know is a big part of it. But even if something goes wrong, we don't just go off on them typically, with the meal. Like we're not, you see people that are so, if people, some people are embarrassing to go to restaurants with, that's a whole nother
Yes.
conversation. But they find something wrong with things all the time and they're not nice about it. And so it just goes back to what you said. People want to feel valued and they want to feel loved. And niceties and manners do that. I think that's why niceties and manners are so important to society because it brings a level of humanity that you can smile at people. You don't have to ignore people when you walk by them in a hallway or on the street because you're terrified somebody's going to stop you and talk to you. When did we get to that? Like, it's just niceties, they matter.
Absolutely. You are 100% right. So, yes. So let's move on because time is moving on. Let's tackle please. I'll let you start off with please.
Well, please, to me, please is a vital part of life. I say please.
Absolutely.
It's a part, Sarah, it's just how mom and dad raised us. Okay. Mom was very particular about the way that we talk to people. That is something that I remember from growing up. She really wanted us to be respectful in our interactions with others. And her and dad taught us, please, thank you, how are you today, to greet people with, hi, how are you today? To look people in the eye when we were talking to them. I don't really remember a time of her sitting down necessarily and saying these are the ways that you interact with people, but it was just integrated into life. It was just intertwined in our life. There was a gentle reminder and sometimes a not so gentle reminder. uh,
Right?
when it came to no ma'am, no sir, yes ma'am, yes sir, you did not respond to mom and dad with yeah.
Mhm.
Dad would not put up with that. And mom wouldn't either. And so, when they were talking to you, there was this way that you responded to them that was respectful. For one, they were older than us, and we respected that. They were an authority in our life. We respected that. So, back to please, for my life, it just is natural to me, and I probably am one of the people that overused the word please, to say please when I'm talking to people. I had never looked at it from a perspective personally of putting myself on the same level as my peers, of making myself equal with people, even working from a position of leadership and asking people um, that work on my teams. I don't really like to say the word work under me, but there is still a hierarchy, in organizational structure, just as what it is, whether people like it or not. Um,
Mhm.
but I've always made it a part of my routine to, if I ask for something, to add a please to it, just because we were taught that it was courteous. I've never looked at it as talking down to somebody. But believe it or
Mhm.
not, I found in life and in working in different regions and working with different ethnic groups and different things like that, that not everybody sees please as a courtesy. Some people take please as something that demeans them. And so I think it's important to understand where please came from, and how it progressed over time. And it goes back to what you were talking about, the royal kids approach. But I was just looking it up today because I wanted to see some different information on it, and see what other people were saying about it and how it should be used in society, or how people take it in society. And so it was talking about, in a couple of these different things that I was reading. First, it's an interjection that can be used as an adverb, and it's related to the verb to please. So when you're asking somebody to do something, you know, in Old English, was the approach of, if that pleases you, would you mind to do this? And then through the years and through time in different ages, it just turned into please. And so it became simplified. But some people say with your kids, you shouldn't say please. They say, it's your son. You're telling him to take out the trash. So just say, take out the trash. What are your thoughts on that as a mother?
As a mother, I think that there are times, um, this is how I operate. First, when I first need a job done, or I don't even like to call it a job, just a chore, because really I, and this is a whole nother rabbit trail some other day. Children need chores. We'll just say that, of all
Sure,
ages. Um,
absolutely.
so I feel like that if I if I ask first, I'm going to ask with the word please included. That's my request, even though you know that's your chore as a daughter, because I only have one daughter, but other families have this also that we've been familiar with and we have in our lives. If I ask something, I'm going to include the word please the first time. If I see you're ignoring me or you're making excuses or whatever as a mother, then probably the second time I'm going to say, I asked you the first time. The second time I'm telling you, go take out the trash. It's falling out of the trash can. It needs to be emptied now, not 30 minutes later, not tomorrow, not tonight when you get home from school.
Right.
Go take it out. And so I think, as a parent with authority, as long as I am not abusing or whatever this world wants to term, the big term word now is bullying. I'm not bullying my child. I'm teaching that child or teenager or young adult or whatever is in my care responsibility. And I'm trying, first of all, to teach by using common courtesy, which is what we're talking about today. But if they cannot receive the common courtesy, then I'm going to probably exert some authority.
I think that makes perfect sense. And so I think the best, in my opinion, and from my perspective, the best approach is to always lead with courtesy and respect. Then, if somebody disrespects you in return or doesn't use courtesy in return, because it's a courtesy to do what you know you need to do as well, right? Because there's balance in everything. So you can say, well, my mom's not courteous to me. She doesn't use please. Or an employee on a job can say, my boss isn't courteous to me. They don't use please. Well, are you courteous to do what you know it's your responsibility to do?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's respect on that side of things too. And that's a conversation for another day. But once again, it goes back to that relational thing, right? There's give and take in life. It's a reciprocal situation. And so respect earns respect.
Mm-hmm.
But if it doesn't earn it, if people don't respond with it, then sometimes respect has to demand respect. That's
Absolutely.
the next level of it. I don't really like using the respect demands respect, but sometimes people are just disrespectful, and that's problematic. And so for me, I'm always going to use a please approach. And I think that it depends on whether you put a period or an exclamation on the end or a question mark if you're doing it in writing. If I put a period or an exclamation mark on something, then I'm probably telling somebody to do something. And I'm past the point of giving you the option. I'm like, I'm just trying to be nice at this point. But
yes.
Pretty soon I'm about to take this please off of here and be like, this is your job. No. But the flip side of that too, Sarah, and I don't want to get too analytical because I know I can. When you're working with a volunteer army, it just goes back. I think about a volunteer army a lot because we work in the church, I think it's important to lead with courtesy and to lead with respect. And then if you're in a paid position, even though you lead with courtesy, those that are working in paid roles and have defined responsibilities, they need to respond with courtesy as well. And it's just like a family situation too. That respect is important on both sides. So I feel like please is vital to be used. I don't mean it disrespectful. It's so weird to me that the world looks at please as a demeaning term. And then some people say it's a begging term. Like people in high authority say it makes you look like you're begging. You shouldn't have to say please to people all the time. So I guess just knowing when and where to use it. But if you're asking for something, can you hand me that, please? I think that's mannerly. I think that's a courtesy, especially if you drop something on the floor and it's under somebody else's table. What you going to do? Crawl under their table in between their legs and grab it? That's weirder. To me, that's more weird than saying please.
I agree.
I'd rather just be like, I'm so sorry. My glasses fell under your table. Would you mind to hand those to me, please? Or do you want me down there between your feet and your legs, grasping around in the dark, trying to find them? That's weird.
I agree. I would much rather you ask me, please pick that up for me. Oh my
Sorry,
goodness.
just keeping it
No,
real.
I'm with you 100%. So I agree 102% that it is important that we're thoughtful. And here's the thing too. I think we have to be conscientious and careful about just assuming that somebody's demeaning us if they're saying the word please. Don't
Right.
just shoot off, oh, don't demean me like that. Well, you don't know where they where they were raised or what kind of, they've had things instilled in you and we've had it instilled in us since we were born. Mom,
Right.
it was just a common thing all the time around our house. You didn't do things without saying please or thank you. So just
Right.
because I'm asking you or saying please doesn't mean that I'm trying to demean you. So yeah, I think it's crazy that you have to clarify things like that in this world that we live in anymore.
Well, and I think it just goes back to the fact that, and I don't mean this in a negative sense, but it is a reality of life. And I'm just going to be blunt when I say this. And therapists probably would tell me, Anna, there's layers to that. And yes, there is. I respect that. I'm not being disrespectful. But sometimes we need to just lose the victim mentality and stop looking
Yes.
at everybody from the perspective of, oh, they're trying to demean me, oh, they're trying to do this to me, oh, that distrustful approach to life, that the world, this culture that we're in and the society that we're in tries to make us all look through that same lens. Sometimes people are just being respectful. People from the South, I mean, they say,
Yes.
like, they're even more mannerly than I am. But people from
Mhm.
up here in the region that we live in are like, don't call me sir. That makes me feel old. Well, the world I come from, you called everybody sir and ma'am. It had nothing to do with age, it had to do with respect.
Yes, which will segue into what we were gonna, what I was gonna just throw out there. I know we're getting short on time now, but um, yes, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, thank you, sir, thank you, ma'am. I know it sounds like rote, but it was just a norm for
Mm-hmm.
us. And Joe and I were laughing about this. When you go down south, Texas, there's not a man that we've ever met that doesn't say yes, sir, no, sir, thank you, ma'am, you're welcome, ma'am. It's just the norm. That's life
Right.
when you go further south even than we are. And so they're not trying to make you feel old or decrepit or out of the loop. It's just the way they were taught. That's just how you answer. You say yes sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, no thank you. Anna, I even do that with my littles when I'm teaching them, and they love it. It's hilarious, but they love it. I say to kindergartners, "Thank you, sir," and they just strut their stuff, walk off, and you're welcome, ma'am. you know,
Yes.
and we make a game out of it. It's not about demeaning or making people
Mm-mm.
feel certain ways. It's just a good old common courtesy.
Right. And I I feel that parents shouldn't be afraid to train their children courtesies because they think they make them seem weak. You know, the world we live in puts a lot of emphasis on being confident and being strong and knowing who you are. I think that you can be confident and you can be strong and be solid in your identity and still be kind to people, still be courteous to people, still be respectful to people. And we can't get into all the layers of training kids today because there are layers to this. You don't let people walk on you. No, you don't. You don't have to be subservient to people in your approach just because you're using manners. You don't have to. Um, you don't have to operate in a way that makes you that you have to take the small side all the time. That you have to play small. So I think
Mhm.
there's a right way to teach children that and raising them to be strong and confident, but also to have courtesy and respect and manners. And I don't think it ever hurts to remember that the scripture says, he that exalteth himself shall be abased, but he that is humbled shall be exalted. He that is humble, he that is abased shall be exalted. I don't have it right in front of me, so I may not be saying it exactly right, but it isn't demeaning to be mannerly. It isn't being a simpleton to be mannerly. Really, it is royal to be mannerly, because people that are royal, God, I don't think God's a bad father, a mean father, right? He expects things of us, but it says it is the Father's good pleasure in the Bible. So he takes pleasure in doing things for his children, right? But he
Yeah.
also likes his children to tell him thank you. So there's a relational give and a take there. There's a reciprocation for the good things he does for his children. And I think that's part of manners in life. When we're kind to people and we're courteous to people and we acknowledge their role in life, or we acknowledge them as a human that is worthy of our respect, then it makes them want to be around us. It makes
Mm-hmm.
them want to interact with us. It makes them want to talk to us. And now for you and I may not say yes, ma'am, no, sir to you guys all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
there's some Kansas for you, you guys. It might not come to my mind because we're brother and sister. And I hope that the trend is more that I do than I don't,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't ever want to just be informal with people I love all the time either. But I
Right.
can promise you, I'm going to say yes, sir, to Brother Wilson and Bishop Young and Pastor Young and to my husband. Girl, this is so funny that we're talking about this. I just interrupted myself again. I'm telling you, it's a habit. But let me finish that thought first, and then I'll tell you what made me laugh and interrupt myself. When I said I say yes, sir, to my husband, because I don't always say yes, sir, to my
Right.
husband. And he is trying very hard to train me to do so.
It works some days, it doesn't.
Girl, now people that are listening to this that don't know us would be very mad about that. They'd be like, how dare he?
I
Girl,
know, right?
you know? But
Yes.
it's a running joke between the two of us, right?
Yes. Yes.
But anyways, I'm going to say yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, to the beautiful elders that God has put in our life. Why? Because I cherish them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just my way. Everybody can do it their own way. We're not all the same, but that's my way showing my love is through
Mm-hmm.
respecting them, because I want them to feel precious and I want them to feel respected and I want them to feel loved. Maybe that's my love language. I don't know. So anyway, now that I finished that thought, so we were going into the church to pray. like last week sometime, it was in the evening. We were walking in the church to pray and we used the side doors. Sometimes I probably shouldn't say that publicly because really everybody's supposed to use the back doors. But my knee has been really messed up. And so I sometimes just, I'm being an old grandma. I don't want to take the pain of walking from the very back of the building. So
Yes.
I go in the side door just right into the prayer room sometimes because I have a key to do that. And so, and I try not to take advantage of it, but just through this season, I have been going in the side door. And so we're going in and he does something and I'm like, thank you. Oh, he asked me a question and I'm like, yes. And he's like, sir. And I was like, over whose dead body? He's like, you are so disrespectful. I'm like, since when do I call you sir? And I'm looking at him like this and he's like, I'm never going to get her trained ever. But when it matters, I
Yeah.
do say yes, sir. But when he demands it, I don't. Maybe I'm not
Right.
submitted. Maybe I'm not fully submitted yet. Pray for me. I need Jesus.
Oh, good times. I love those times. That's what I love about the elder girls because it's just real. It's real life. And
Yeah.
so, but yes, I agree with you. There are times as families because we are affectionate and whatever we get together and we have good times like this, we're laughing
Mhm.
and we're not saying yes, ma'am. But the manners, just being there and being present with those that I love and respect is very vital for me to say yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. And we're about out of time. Um, we've conquered a lot. I did want to say two more words that are very important, really four, two phrases. Excuse me or pardon me, depending on what word you like to use with that combination, and forgive me are two very important phrases. Um, excuse me, mostly just when we're walking and, if we need to walk around people or in front of people, or if somebody's in a conversation and we need to get an answer quickly, it's never impolite to say, excuse me just for a minute, or pardon me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I really have this important question that needs to be answered right away. Somebody's on the phone or whatever, as the scenario goes. But those are very important phrases. And then, of course, forgive me. We should never be too proud to ask people to forgive us when we're wrong, when we've done something we should not have done. We answered a matter with the wrong spirit and attitude. Think of something else. But there again is being balanced and not using it as just a rote phrase that we say, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry,
Yeah. I know we're almost at an hour, but I think it is important to take just a couple minutes and talk about this because these are important things. And I know some of these we're digging in a little deeper on, and I'm taking us a little deeper on them, but I'm doing that on purpose. But excuse me is important. And one of the things that goes along with excuse me is okay, children, teenagers, adults, older people, it is impolite. It is actually downright rude to walk between two people that are talking.
Yes.
Okay. So if there is absolutely no way around them, then you can say, excuse me, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, or please forgive me for interrupting, because I'm sorry gets disingenuous after a while.
Yes.
Sometimes the way it's used, it's overused, but please forgive me for interrupting. However, I need to get this message to so and so right away, and I need to get through. Okay. Then they'll say, oh, you can go ahead and go through. Then at that point in time, you've been given passageway. But just to push people apart and walk through, I see this all the time, Sarah. I see
Me
it
too.
all the time. I see it at church. I see it in public. And it blows my mind that people don't know the simple courtesy of not walking between people when they are talking and using
Yes.
the word excuse me. Or if you belch, you say excuse me. Or other bodily functions, which you should not be doing in public and mixed
Mm-mm.
company if at all possible. I know that in other countries, China is one, for instance, where you belch, it shows your appreciation for the food. And so that's a common occurrence over there. And it's sometimes a courtesy to belch, which is so weird. I don't know if I could do that, but maybe I would try so I didn't offend them. I don't know. I'm not in China, so I haven't had to try it out.
I don't think I could do it. I just don't think I could.
But girl, in our intercultural studies, it
I
literally talks
know.
about, how that's important to them.
Yes.
But we're in America. And in America, it is maybe, if you're eating with your Asian friends at their house and they're cooking you a meal or something, then you might, you want to be respectful. But when you're at my house and you belch out loud, it's rude.
Right.
Okay, I'm just telling you because I was born and raised on the US soil. And
Yes.
that's our custom is that bodily functions don't belong in public and
Mm-mm.
definitely don't belong in mixed company. And so that's where you say, excuse me, if something does occur unexpectedly. But you
Right.
also say, excuse me, if you accidentally slammed a door or if you didn't hear somebody, you can say, excuse me, would you mind to repeat that? So excuse me just means like you're putting in a nicety to create a pause. So maybe anytime I interrupt, I should say, excuse me. So, but I do think excuse me is important. And then definitely forgiveness. asking for forgiveness. As children of God, we should always, we should definitely own our mistakes. I think that's important. And it takes a bigger person to own what they've done than it does to just ignore it and act like it's going to go away. If you're in leadership and you can't own your mistakes, then your people are in trouble, because the people you lead will never learn to own their mistakes. And I've worked with some high level leaders in our movement. It's an honor that God has allowed me to be a part of it. I'm very thankful for that. And I'm not bragging. It's just the mission that God has put me in right now. And for this season of life has given such opportunities. And in those opportunities, I've had to grow as an individual, right? Because I've had to learn how to interact in those situations. But I've had a very high leader in my life ask for forgiveness. And, it made me respect them just even beyond the respect I already had for them, because they really probably didn't even have to do that, because it was part of my job and it was part of what I was doing. But the approach was stressful, and they recognized that and they owned that. And the approach created probably undue stress in that particular season of life. And they recognized that and they owned it and they addressed it. And I felt like it made me look at them with even more respect than I already did. I already loved them to death and trusted their heart and trusted them as a person. But it just made me realize that it doesn't matter what position God puts you in. You still have a responsibility to the people that you lead to handle them with care. And I think that goes, Sarah, for parents, whether your children are young or old. I think that goes for children with parents, because when our parents get older, sometimes we become the parents and the parents almost become the children. And I don't mean that with any disrespect to any elderly parents in any way, shape, or form, but because our parents get frail, there becomes a responsibility to us to help them and care for them, and vice versa. Like that respect level goes both ways. There's a responsibility to the people that we care for in our lives or that we work with, of just taking the humble road when we need to. And that's one thing I think I have to say that I really appreciated about Dad, because Dad always taught us. Dad was a tough and a gruff man. And I know I'm talking kind of thoughtfully, but I want to say my words carefully here, because I don't want to say things improperly. But Dad was tough and gruff when you knew him. But Dad always taught us to take the humble side. There were times that we probably asked for forgiveness when we really didn't have to, because we weren't the one who committed the offense. But because we wanted people to be saved, and we were in a role of ministry, and people saw our humanness sometimes, maybe. I don't know about everybody else in the family, but there were times that I was just like, I'm just going to ask him to forgive me, because that way it's off of my chest. And I'm not saying in a disingenuous way either. That way I just felt like if I had for some reason done something that offended them, that my bases were covered, because I didn't want there to be anything in my heart against them. And sometimes forgiving others is releasing yourself. Freeing yourself and liberating yourself. So if there's any doubt in your mind or any question in your mind, then I think it's okay to ask forgiveness. And it's important to ask forgiveness, because at that point in time, when we ask forgiveness or say, please forgive me, then the responsibility is on that other person to forgive us. And if they don't, that's between them and God. And sometimes it puts a responsibility on them to ask for forgiveness in response. But whether they ask us in response or not, if there's any question or any doubt in our mind, then I think that it's best, in my opinion, to just ask them to forgive me. What am I losing in that? I'm not losing anything. Maybe my pride, but I tell you what, I am gaining peace of mind.
Well, and and you say maybe my pride, but the Bible does say pride goes before destruction, and haughty spirit before a fall. And if I'm so proud and haughty that I cannot humble myself to forgive or ask forgiveness, when I have done wrong, and sometimes when I have not done wrong, then I could be headed for a fall. And so I would rather take the humble side and ask forgiveness just as a precaution, so that I can, one, I can still make sure that my heart is right, my spirit, my attitude is right. And I'd rather do that than to be haughty and be prideful and go to hell wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Just my personal thoughts on that, because so many times growing up in life and even nowadays, you see so many, even in the news, in it blows my mind how many people are never wrong, and they could have been involved in rioting and they're not wrong, and they were involved in a theft ring, and they're not wrong. They end up claiming, what is this term? Anyway, I don't even want to go down that rabbit trail, but I would rather take the humility side and the humble side in myself and in those that I am teaching and working with and training. I would rather ask for forgiveness than to be
Definitely.
wrong and proudful.
Yes, and I think it's really important, Sarah. I know we're ending on, kind of a more serious note here, but I think it's really important that parents don't disregard this,
Mhm.
because we have a society full of children who have been right over every authority in their life. The ushers at church get on your children and you get mad at the ushers. And the pastor says something you don't like and you get mad at the pastor. And now I'm using a you statement, which is assumptive, right? But it's the reality of life. I do too. I mean, I don't have children, but sometimes my spirit rises up within me because that's that old carnal flesh. And the teacher at school gets on to your child and you're like, you don't have no right to tell my child what to do. Or we say, and I told someone I love this just recently in a conversation, but we say it takes a village to raise our children. Well, the village tries to help you raise your kids, and you're like, get your hands and your mouth off my kids. Okay.
Exactly.
So, who helps us raise our children if nobody in their life can speak into their life? And we know there's a balance to that. That's a conversation for another day. Don't make us qualify everything we say. But when you set up boundaries where children are always right and the adults in their lives are always wrong, then children grow up thinking they can do no wrong.
Hmm.
And those are the children that become the citizens of the society that we live in, that go out and riot and burn down cities and spit in preachers' faces and do terrible things to their classmates at school because they know they can do no wrong. And their parents are going to side with them either way. And there's going to be no response. They don't have to take responsibility for their
Hmm.
actions to others. And making a child say, okay, I interrupted myself again, but making a child, because I had a thought, but making a
Excuse
child
you.
say, thank you, but making a child say, please forgive me, makes them take ownership and pay a price for
Hmm.
their behavior. And this would probably make some people so angry. But girl, there was a time when I got a detention, and the
Hmm.
word on the detention didn't ad- that this is why I say definitions matter. But I learned this clear back when I was like 13 years old.
Hmm.
But I got a detention, and it said I got a detention for this specific word. Well, being the nerd that I am, I got a dictionary out and I looked up that word. Well, I was not doing what that word meant.
I know where you're going.
I don't even know what to say. This nerd part of my life really needs help. But um, so I asked the teacher for a meeting, and we went in the office, and I said, you cannot give me this detention because you gave me it for this word. And what I was doing is not what this word means. So the word you put on this detention is, I was not doing that word. Oh, it made the teacher irate. And I think I got another detention, honestly. And so when I went home and I told mom and dad, looking back, Dad was probably dying inside, right? He
Yes.
was probably laughing his head off. But he was like, Anna, I don't care if the word was wrong. He said, you come and tell your mom and dad, and we'll go talk to the teacher about that. But it's not your job to go to your teacher and act like you're the authority in her life. She is still an authority in your life. You come
Hmm.
to your parents and you let your parents, you're going to go ask her to forgive you. Girl, I did not want to do that
Hmm.
because I was like, she gave me the wrong word.
Hmm.
You know what? He didn't care. And you know
Yes.
what he was teaching me? I didn't have to always be right. I haven't completely conquered that yet. I still like being right sometimes. But he was teaching me that I didn't always have to be right,
Yeah.
that I had to be respectful,
Hmm.
that I had to be
Yes.
respectful. It's more important to be right with God than to be intellectually right.
100%. And I think that's where we have got to be so adamant and so precise in training our children, our teens, our coworkers, whoever. But it has to come from us first. And
Mhm.
so if we can humble ourselves enough to do that as an example, not because we want to be the example, but just because we want to be right with God,
Mhm.
that is where it all needs to stem from, is because we have to be first and foremost right with God more than anything.
Absolutely. So, we'll talk another day about layers to that. I don't think that children are never that there's not times that children haven't been done wrong and parents definitely need to be involved. I think there's a right
Right.
approach to it. And you as a mom can talk to that even more than I can, but as a teacher that has raised a lot of children, I've seen children done wrong too. So that
Yes.
in this world we live in, we have to qualify everything. But people who know us know us. They know what we
Yes.
believe, know where we stand on these things. And so I just think this conversation is important because the whole conversation about courtesy, about manners, about respect, about niceties, this is part of the character of the next generation that's being developed, right? And
Yes.
so they're informative years of their life. And you and I, we talk about how part of our passion, our burden on the elder girls is transferring to upcoming and next generation apostolics and ministers and leaders some of the things that our parents put in us. A lot of people say, how did you get to where you were or where you are? Because this is how we operated in life.
And still do.
And still do, and so first of all you have Jesus in your life, but second of all you treat other people as humans. You don't look down on them, you don't disrespect them, but in that sense having niceties and manners in your life creates relationships with people. It's back to relational, right? And so it's sad that we live in a world where we have first generation apostolics coming to church that have never been trained on these things in their life. And so they think that they're like, bro, why are you calling me sir? Like it's so abnormal to them. Like
It is.
they never thought that they were worthy of being called sir. Isn't that sad?
It is. It really is sad. And I think that when you said that, Anna, it really triggers so many people that you deal with, just even in public, in out and about, grocery shopping and restaurants, and just our world. Common courtesies is just a lost art. And so
Yeah,
they've been so belittled and called names and cussed at and demeaned, that when somebody does show them a common courtesy and respect through the common courtesy, they don't even know how to handle it because of that.
absolutely. And so it shows you unfortunately, our world's identity is kind of in the trash. Thank God for Jesus. And thank God
Amen.
that he is Jesus. So I can clarify that. But thank God that we have the truth that tells us our identity is in Christ. And when our identity is in Christ, courtesy and manners and respect shouldn't be foreign to us because we are the people of God and we are the children of God. And I will say this in closing as we close. If we treat people out of the church better than we treat people in the church with these same manners and courtesies, shame on us, because those are our brothers and sisters in Christ. And vice versa.
Absolutely.
If we treat people in the church better than we treat people in the world. We're not being authentic. This should be who we are, no matter where we are, no matter who we're dealing with, no matter who we're interacting with. It should be a part of our character. When something is a part of someone's character, it doesn't change based on the environment that they're in.
Absolutely, 100%. You are who you are. And if you're, here's the thing, and we're closing, and we may have to break this up into 2 sessions, which is fine. But when we are real from the inside out, deep, then we don't have to pretend. And we don't have to put on a front, and we don't have to put on a facade and act like something that we really are not. Because when we're real from down deep inside and we allow the Holy Ghost, as apostolic Pentecostals, we allow the Holy Ghost to check us and to red flag us when we're not being real, then it's not a problem. We're okay with that. I'd rather be flagged when I'm not being who I really need to be than trying to put on a show and a facade all the time.
I agree. I want to treat the people that I love with kindness, but I also want to treat the people that I am being a witness to with kindness. I want them to see Jesus in me. Shouldn't we all?
Yes.
That's what we're called to do, is be ambassadors of the gospel of Christ. We're not here, and boy, here's your controversial sister going in this mannerly talk. But I know the Bible talks about, reproduction and having a house and having a good job. We're blessed and all the things, but we weren't put on this earth just to have a picket fence, a family,
Mm-mm.
a 6-figure income, to be Instagram influencers instead of world changers, and to live this life that was totally self-centered on us. We were put in this world by God. The reason you were told to reproduce was so that you could win people for Christ, so that your children, until Jesus returns to the earth, we were told to reproduce. So if we had offspring until Jesus returns to the earth, that's the balance of this earth, of keeping this earth from being just completely corrupted. And so apostolics having children is vital, because those children, through successive generations till Jesus comes, are the ones that are going to be bringing the gospel to each generation, right? And bringing truth and salvation to each generation. Are they going to be effective at that if they're acting like cavemen and they don't have any training in their life? Probably not.
Nope. I agree 100%. And as we close, taken from that note, here's the challenge for this week or the next 2 weeks until we podcast again. There's a scripture in the Bible, and I can tell you where it's at, but I'm not going to, because I want you to research. Here's what we have to do sometimes. We have to research. I'm going to Hope Corps right now, and there's some things I have to research before I write my papers or before I do my assignment. And so what I would like to do is put out the challenge this week for your homework assignment for the Elder Girls podcast, is to find in the Bible the scripture that says that it's more blessed to give than to receive. And the other scripture that I would like for you to research and to find in the Bible is where it talks about preferring one another in love. That's your homework assignment for this week.
I think that's great. Well, Sarah, I think that's a good wrapping up place for this week. And like you said, we may split this into 2. We'll see here as we go through. We're about at 1:15, so it'd probably be good to do this in 2 sessions. I think it would be, people would probably get more value out of it, so we can do that. But I think this has been a good conversation. I think we've covered a lot of important topics. I want to say that I think our parents are doing a great job. This is not to demean or browbeat people. I think that the people of God are doing a great job. It's just a reminder that in this world that's getting more casual and more informal, to remember that the important things still matter in life. We don't want to just, diminish the things that matter because the world gets more casual as we live, right? And we'll dig into that in other conversations. But this is a part of just keeping, not about formality so much, but just keeping that relational quality where we are representing Christ, we are loving the people around us, and acknowledging them and respecting them and valuing them. and that we are training future generations. We're transferring that to future generations. And so I think this has been a great conversation.
Yes, I agree. And I hope that everybody else feels like it's been a great conversation. And I think that it's important that we keep it real. I think that's one of the most important things is just keeping it real. If you have any suggestions or some manners that you were taught that are just common courtesies, hey, when you comment, please comment on the Elder Girls page on Instagram or Facebook. If you're not following us, go there and follow us. You can listen to the podcast on. We want you all to make sure that you comment uh, on your podcast site or on Instagram or Facebook. If you follow us on Instagram or Facebook or even YouTube, when you watch our podcast this week, we would love for you to make a comment and especially tell us where you found the 2 scriptures that we sent out as the challenge to find this week. Anna, over to you.
Yes, that'll be great. And you can find us on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, radio. We're a part of a variety of different podcast apps. Google Podcasts, you can see us on. We're on YouTube. And so definitely check us out there. And on the podcast app that you're on, let us know on the podcast app itself if you like it, because that'll get us up in the ratings, which will make our podcast more public to people. In Spotify or in Apple, comment and give feedback, give a thumbs up or whatever, subscribe, like and subscribe. That really helps us gain recognition in the feed so more people have access to the podcast and have awareness of the podcast. So thank you all for joining us, and we have some exciting news about merchandise coming soon. So stay tuned on that front and have a blessed weekend.
Yes, God bless you all.